Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We read from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 5. The demigods appeal to the Lord. Text 24. Shri Shuka Uvacha Iti Abhyasya Suran Vedha Saha Devai arindama ajitasya padam sakshat jagama tamasa param. Shri Shuka Uvacha Ityabhasya Suran Veda Sahadevar Arindama Ajitasya Padam Sakshaj Jagama Tamasa Param. Ityabhasya Suran Veda Sahadevar Arindama Ajitasya Padam Sakshat Jagama Tamasa Param. Shuka Uvacha. Sri Sukadeva Gosvami said, Iti, thus, Abhasya, talking, Suran, unto the demigods, Vedha, Lord Brahma, who is the head of the universe, and who gives everyone good sense in Vedic knowledge. Saha, with, Devai, the demigods, arindama, O Maharaja Parikshit, subduer of all kinds of enemies, such as the senses, ajitasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, padam, to the place, sakshat, directly, jagama, went, tamasa, the world of darkness, param, transcendental to, beyond. Translation. O Maharaj Parikshit, subduer of all enemies, after Lord Brahma finished speaking to the demigods, he took them with him to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is beyond this material world. The Lord's abode is on an island called Svetadvipa, which is situated in the ocean of milk. Please repeat. O Maharaj Parikshit, subduer of all enemies, after Lord Brahma finished speaking to the demigods, he took them with him to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Which is beyond this material world. The Lord's abode is on an island called Svetadvipa, which is situated in the ocean of milk. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit is addressed here as arindama, subduer of all enemies. Not only do we have enemies outside of our bodies, but within our bodies there are many enemies, such as lusty desires, anger, and greed. Maharaj Parikshit is specifically addressed as arindama because in his political life he was able to subdue all kinds of enemies. And even though he was a young king, as soon as he heard he was going to die within 7 days, he immediately left his kingdom. He did not follow the dictates of enemies within his body, such as lust, greed, and anger. He was not at all angry with the muni's son who had cursed him. Rather, he accepted the curse and prepared for his death in the association of Sukadeva Gosvami. Death is inevitable. No one can surpass the force of death. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit, while fully alive, wanted to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam. He is consequently addressed here as arindama. Another word, surapriya, is also significant. Although Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is equal toward everyone, he is especially inclined toward his devotees. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mai te teshu chapyaham. The devotees are all demigods. There are 2 kinds of men within this world. One is called the Deva, and the other is called the Asura. The Padma Purana states, Dvo bhuta sargo lokesmin, daivasura evacha, Vishnu bhakta smrito daiva, asuras tad viparyaya. Anyone who is a devotee of Lord Krishna is called a Deva, and others, even though they may be devotees of demigods, are called asuras. Ravana, for example, was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he is described as an asura. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu is described as a great devotee of Lord Brahma, yet he was also an asura. Therefore, only the devotee of Lord Vishnu is called Sura, not Asura. Lord Krishna is very much pleased with his devotees. even if they are not on the topmost stage of devotional service. Even on the lower stages of devotional service, one is transcendental. And if one continues with devotional life, he continues to be a deva or sura. If one continues in this way, Krishna will always be pleased with him and will give him all instructions so that he may very easily return home back to Godhead. Concerning Ajitasya Padam, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the milk ocean of this material world. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Padam Kshirodadi sta Svetadvipam tamasa prakrite param. The island known as Svetadvip, which is in the ocean of milk, is transcendental. It has nothing to do with this material world. A city government may have a rest house where the governor and important government officers stay. Such a rest house is not an ordinary house. Similarly, although Svetadvip, which is in the ocean of milk, is in this material world, it is param padam, transcendental. Translation again. O Maharaja Parikshit, subduer of all enemies, after Lord Brahma finished speaking to the demigods, he took them with him to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is beyond this material world. The Lord's abode is on an island called Svetadvip, which is situated in the ocean of milk. Hare Krishna. It is a great honor and privilege and pleasure to be back here with you all at the lotus feet of Shri Radha Kalachandji, Shri Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra, Shri Gaur Nitai, Srila Prabhupada, and his devotees. Today's verse and purport are extraordinarily beautiful. Srila Prabhupada in the purport discusses 3 words in particular. First is arindama, subduer of all enemies. The term was used by Sukadeva Gosvami to refer to Maharaja Parikshit. Maharaja Parikshit was a great king, and he certainly subdued all external enemies. Srimad-Bhagavatam describes that while he was touring his kingdom, he came across a cruel, mean, low-class person who was torturing a cow, and he was immediately ready to kill the miscreant. So he was very strict. And a ruler must be strict to maintain discipline, to maintain law and order in the kingdom. different qualities are prominent in devotees according to their positions in the society. For example, the main quality that defines a Brahman and beautifies a Brahman is forgiveness. But Srila Prabhupada says if a Kshatriya forgives, then there will be no law and order in the kingdom. If Maharaja Parikshit had met Kali, the personality of Kali who was torturing the cow and bull, and Kali had said, "Oh, please forgive me," and he said, "Okay, I forgive you, you can go," Kali would have had the liberty to continue to harass innocent creatures, such as the cow and bull. So Parikshit Maharaj punished him, and that was his duty. But for a Brahman, forgiveness is a very important quality. Srimad-Bhagavatam says that it defines a Brahman, and that different qualities beautify different people, and that a Brahman is beautified by the quality of forgiveness. Kshatriya is beautified by the quality of courage, like that. But apart from external enemies, there are also internal enemies, such as lust, greed, and anger. And King Parikshit subdued them as well. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of the curse of the Brahmin boy. You know the story that King Parikshit was passing through the forest, and he came to the hermitage of a sage who was deep in meditation. By the arrangement of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit felt very thirsty, and it is the standard of Vedic hospitality that when a guest comes to one's house unannounced, Atiti Deva Bhavo, one should receive such a guest like a god. One should receive him with sweet words. One should offer him a place to sit. One should offer him some water to drink, and ultimately one should offer him prasad. When King Parikshit came before the sage did not acknowledge him at all, because the sage was deep in meditation. And King Parikshit, although it was quite unexpected, he became angry. But that was also the arrangement of the Lord, to bring King Parikshit back home, back to Godhead sooner. But anyway, for a moment he became angry, and he saw a dead snake lying there, And he put the snake around the neck of the sage, garlanded him with the dead snake, and left. But immediately he felt bad. He repented that he had done such a thing. And Srila Prabhupada says that is the nature of any good soul, that if he makes some mistake, he will repent for it. And that repentance also purifies. Sometimes a devotee who is faultless, even if he hasn't actually committed a mistake, but out of natural humility, he will feel that he has made a mistake or committed an offense and repent. And that repentance purifies the devotee, chastens the devotee. So Maharaj Parikshit was regretting his misbehavior. And in the meantime, that sage or that Brahman's son, Shringi, understood what had happened. Shringi was only 12 years old. But in those days, because of the culture and way of life and austerities, the Brahmins had great powers, even the young boy Shringi. But he unfortunately misused his power, and he cursed Maharaj Parikshit to die by being bitten by a snake within 7 days. And King Parikshit, the subduer of all enemies, did not become angry. He was not influenced or defeated by lust to continue to enjoy his position in the material world, by greed to have more, or by anger. But he accepted the curse and went to the banks of the Ganges or Yamuna, ultimately to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Gosvami. As Srila Prabhupada says, death is inevitable for everyone. Of course, we do try to avoid it. Ordinary people want to avoid death because they identify with the body, and they think that without the body they won't be able to enjoy. They have so many attachments based on the body. Parents, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, children, friends, relatives. They can't give up their attachments. They want to live in the body as long as possible. A devotee is not attached to the body, not attached to people or places or things, although he is attached to Krishna's service. And in the mood of service to Krishna, he may see the body as a facility for service, which it is. Not just a facility for service, but it's also Krishna's property, meant for Krishna's service. And therefore he will take care of the body as Krishna's property. Similarly, he will take care of people who are related to him, who have been brought into some relationship with him, or who have been born into some relationship with him. Seeing them all as spirit souls, part and parcel of Krishna, who are also meant to serve Krishna. And in that way, he is attached to them in as much as they're parts and parcels of Krishna, Krishna's energy, meant for Krishna's service. Two weekends ago, I was in San Jose. On the Saturday, Vaisheshika Prabhu gave his first initiations. It was a very beautiful event. It's a very wonderful occasion. Everything about the program was wonderful. And on Monday, I spent some time with him and Keshava Bharatidas Goswami, who was also there. And Vaisheshika Prabhu was discussing the problem of some of his Indian congregation members who are in San Jose or in the United States on H-1 visas. And he was saying that because of the economic crisis, many people were losing their jobs. And in the case of these devotees, they ran the risk of losing their visas. And he was saying that, that it would be very hard for him if they did lose their visas and had to leave. And he said, he depends on them practically and emotionally. So I asked, what do you mean by emotionally? And he said, and I think most of you know Vaisheshika Prabhu. I mean, he is a pure devotee. He is a pure devotee. Vaisheshika Prabhu said, that he's very attached to them. So they're more dear to him than his own life. And he said, thinking of them having to leave, he said, I can't even go there. I can't even think about it. So there can also be spiritual attachment based on service to Guru and Krishna. Sometimes I tell the story of one of Prabhupada's disciples named Balai Dasi. She was already, I guess when I joined the Boston Temple in 1969, all the devotees who were there before me were senior devotees. Saw them as senior devotees. She was a senior devotee. And she was one of the first to get married, and she didn't have a clear idea of what marriage in Krishna consciousness meant. Many of the devotees who joined then were sort of young in years, not so mature in terms of the world, but they had complete faith in Srila Prabhupada, and they wanted to do everything exactly the way he told them. They had faith that if they followed him, they would get Krishna in the end. They would get what he had, Krishna consciousness. So she wasn't sure what her relationship with her husband should be, whether they even had a relationship other than God brother and God sister. So she wrote Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada replied that yes, you do have a relationship through Krishna. Just like the right hand has a relationship with the left hand through the body, through the trunk of the body, through the stomach. And that is the principle. Our relationships can be based on the body, or they can be based on Krishna. And the attachment that's based on the body is material. And the attachment that is based on Krishna, that has Krishna as the center, is spiritual. In her prayers to Lord Krishna, Queen Kunti prayed, please sever my ties of affection for my kinsmen, the Yadus and the Vrishnis. Srila Prabhupada explains that both of Kunti's families were devotees. Her paternal family were the Yadus. Kunti was the sister of Vasudeva, was the father of Krishna. They were devotees. And her sons, the Pandavas, they were all devotees. So both families, the one she was born in and the one she married into, were all devotees. And Srila Prabhupada explains that affection for devotees is not outside the range of devotional service. In fact, sometimes the service of devotees is more important than service to Krishna. Krishna is more pleased when we serve a devotee than when we try to serve him directly. So why does Kunti pray, please sever my ties of affection for my kinsmen, the Vrishnis and the Yadus? And Srila Prabhupada explains that what she is asking is that the ties of affection that are based on the body should be severed. But as a soul, one can also have relationships with other souls with the super soul as the center. And that is spiritual, that is congenial, that is beneficial. But the relationship that is based on the body can be an impediment to one's Krishna consciousness. And in the next verse, Queen Kunti prays to Krishna, O Lord of Madhu, please let my affection flow to you without any impediment, just like the Ganges flows to the ocean. So that is the goal of any pure devotee. That is the desire of any pure devotee, that one's affection for Krishna should flow to him without any impediment. And our other relationships are not necessarily impediments if the others are also in the same mood, if they're also caught up in the flow of affection to Krishna, then we all go back home, back to Godhead together. And that is very congenial and pleasing to Krishna. So death is inevitable. Death is the greatest calamity from the material point of view. One has to give up everything, all attachments, material possessions, everything. And Srila Prabhupada writes that one should always be conscious of death. Should always be conscious of death. Then one won't be attached to material things, because one is going to have to lose them anyway. And as Srila Prabhupada often said, Maharaja Parikshit had 7 days to live. We don't even know if we'll have 7 minutes. So we can't take it for granted that we'll have this body and the things related to the body that give us pleasure in this world. So we should be detached. We should always keep that in mind and be detached. But again, as Srila Prabhupada writes in those purports, that a devotee is not devoid of the finer sentiments. He's not devoid of any sentiment. He's not devoid of affection. For example, here we're discussing affection. He's not devoid of affection. But in the life of a devotee, everything is for Krishna. Krishna is the center. And so whether it's affection, greed, anger, it's all with Krishna as the center. Not the body, not sense gratification, not the extensions of the body, but Krishna. Arjuna became angry. Without being angry, you can't fight and kill someone. Arjuna became angry, but his anger was for Krishna, not for sense gratification. Hanuman also became angry. He burned down the whole of Lanka, but he was not angry for his sense gratification, but for the service of Lord Ramchandra. For his sense gratification, Arjuna didn't want to fight. He told Krishna that he would rather live as a mendicant than fight against his superiors. So he was not attached materially. He wasn't angry that, they want to usurp our kingdom. No, he was detached. He said, he was referring to his grandfather and teachers. He said to Krishna, even though they are avaricious, means greedy, still they are my superiors, and I must respect them. And Srila Prabhupada comments that this is how deep the sense of respect goes, how how deep the culture of respect goes. Even though they were avaricious, why were they avaricious? They were avaricious because they were being paid by Duryodhana. Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, they were Arjuna's teachers. They were his elders. They were his superiors. But out of greed, they were accepting money. They were being maintained by Duryodhana. And because they were being paid by him, they stayed with him, even though he was on the side of wrong. Still, Arjuna said, even though they're avaricious, still they are my superiors, and I must respect them. And Srila Prabhupada very much appreciated this mood of respect in Arjuna. And then he broadened the topic that even if a devotee falls down, and he quoted Apichat Sudaracharo Bhajate Mananivat Sadhu Eva Samantavya. He's still to be considered saintly. So even though Bhishma Dev, even though Duryodhana, you could say from a certain point of view, had fallen into bad association, but still they were to be respected, and Arjuna did respect them. So, for his sense gratification, Arjuna didn't want to fight. Out of respect for his elders, he didn't want to fight. But in the end, he did fight, because Krishna wanted him to fight. He knew that Krishna would be pleased. And to fight and kill, you have to be angry. You can't do it otherwise. Srila Prabhupada said that from one point of view, Krishna spoke the whole Bhagavad Gita just to make Arjuna angry. So these sentiments, affection, greed, anger, they are not absent in the life of a devotee, but the difference is that in the life of a devotee they are for Krishna, for Krishna's service, and in the lives of ordinary people they're for the body, for sense gratification, for false ego. So arindama means that Maharaja Parikshit subdued these enemies like lust, greed, and anger. It means material lust, greed, and anger. The other word that Srila Prabhupada discusses in detail is Sura Priya. Sura means demigod, and Priya means dear. Although Krishna is equal to everyone, he is especially dear to the demigods, and the demigods are especially dear to him. And Srila Prabhupada explains with reference to the Padma Purana that any devotee of Krishna is considered a demigod or Sura. And anyone who is not a devotee of Krishna is Asura, or demon. So even devotees of demigods, like Hiranyakasipu was a devotee of Brahma, and Ravana was a devotee of Shiva, but they're considered demons because they were inimical to Vishnu or Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada explains further that even a devotee who's not on the highest level is dear to Krishna. And therefore, in our dealings with devotees, we should always be conscious of the fact that they are dear to Krishna. Even if they're neophytes, even if they're not on the highest level, still they're dear to Krishna. And if we cause pain to a devotee, we're causing pain to Krishna. And if we help a devotee, we're giving pleasure to Krishna. I'm going to read these sentences again because they're very important and I want to comment on a point. Lord Krishna is very much pleased with his devotees, even if they are not on the topmost stage of devotional service. Even on the lower stages of devotional service, one is transcendental. And if one continues with devotional life, he continues to be a deva or sura. If one continues in this way, Krishna will always be pleased with him and will give him all instructions so that he may very easily return home back to Godhead. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam payantite. That those who worship Krishna continuously with love, to them Krishna gives the intelligence by which they can come to him. So it may happen that a devotee may have some difficulty along the way, on the path. But Krishna, within the heart of the devotee, will help the devotee. And ultimately the devotee will be successful. There's that one verse, Apichat sudaracharo bhajate mam ananyavak sadhur eva samantavya, that even if a devotee engages in the most abominable activity, but if he's properly situated in his determination, he is still to be considered saintly. And Prabhupada says these words, sadhur eva, are very emphatic. He or she is to be considered saintly. And then in the next verse, Lord Krishna says, Chipram bhavati dharmatma, that very soon that devotee becomes righteous. Because Krishna, within the heart, will help the devotee. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the devotee who is engaged in the process of chanting and hearing is already engaged in the process of purification. The devotee doesn't have to engage in any other process of atonement, such as prayaschitta, like whatever, fasting, doing some special austerity. In fact, for a pure devotee to engage in such activities outside of Krishna consciousness is itself a fall down. But if the devotee just continues with the essential processes of hearing and chanting, those processes themselves will cleanse the heart. Cheto darpana marjana. And therefore, the devotee will become properly situated in Dharma again. Chipram bhavati dharmatma. And at the end of that verse, Lord Krishna says, Kauntiya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashiti. Son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee will never perish, will never be vanquished. So that is Krishna's promise. So even if a devotee is having some difficulty, we should know that that devotee is Surapriya, dear to Krishna, and that Krishna is dear to the devotee, and that Krishna within the heart will help that devotee. Once His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami commented that sometimes devotees need to be given the time and space to deal with a particular problem. And he said sometimes the tendency of the authorities is, as soon as they see, there's something wrong, some deviation, some departure from the standard behavior, they want to intervene. They want to fix it. They want to fix the devotee, fix the situation, fix the problem. And Tamal Krishna Goswami said that we have to give devotees the time and space they need to deal with the problem. And that is so true. That is what the purport is saying here in an indirect way. That the devotee is dear to Krishna. Krishna is in the heart of the devotee. Krishna will give the devotee intelligence how to come back to him. So we have to have faith in that relationship between the devotee and Krishna, even if the devotee is not on the highest level of devotional service. I remember once, it's quite a responsibility to be a spiritual master. Once His Holiness Shivaram Swami mentioned to me in a sort of wry way that he was having a crisis of faith in his disciples. Usually everyone thinks of it the other way, faith in the Guru. And I had a personal experience. It's a bit subjective, but I do think that the conclusion is proper. I had a disciple who had a very traumatic childhood and, tended to be disturbed. And sometimes he would act in very unusual ways, just because of what he had gone through as a child. But sometimes it came to a point where it was very hard to see how that devotee would progress, So, during that period, I happened to go to San Diego for a festival. And during the kirtan, maybe the kirtan before I gave the class, the best friend of that devotee who was going through such a difficult period was there in the audience. And looking at his face, I just got the idea that I can't give up on this disciple. Because if I give up on this disciple, what hope does the disciple have? And I was thinking, I have to keep my faith in this disciple, not give up on him. And eventually, he came through it. I mean, it's a bit of a long story, but he came through it, and was recently initiated. So, we have to have faith in devotees, even if they're not on the highest platform, and faith in Krishna, faith in their relationship, the relationship of Krishna and the devotee, faith in the power of devotional service. And give devotees time and space to deal with whatever they're going through. And we also go through things, we all go through things. And we may need time and space to deal with them. And if someone's trying to getting very worried, and we have to fix this, we have to fix you, we have to fix the situation, we have to fix the relationship, it may actually disturb the natural process. If one continues in this way, Krishna will always be pleased with him and will give him all instructions so that he may very easily return home back to Godhead. Now this condition, that if one is properly situated in his determination, he is to be considered saintly. What does it mean to be properly situated in his determination? The commentaries and verses quoted by the acharyas say that to be properly situated means to worship Krishna exclusively. It's the same point. Not to take shelter of any other demigod, or not to take shelter of any other person or any process outside of Krishna consciousness, outside of devotional service. That's what it means to be properly situated in one's determination. And if one continues in that way, Chipram Bhavati Dharma, he'll very quickly become righteous. He'll very quickly become situated in religious activities. And the last word that Srila Prabhupada comments on is ajitasya padam, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the milk ocean of this material world. And Prabhupada gives the example that here in the purport he gave the example of a government rest house. Sometimes he would give the example of an embassy. Technically or legally, an embassy is not part of the country that surrounds it. but it's part of the country to which it belongs. For example, say the United States Embassy in Tehran. That's not Iran, that's the United States, if it's still there. But it's the United States. And the government of Iran has no authority within the United States Embassy, because that is part of the United States. So in the same way, Svetadvipa, it's surrounded by the material world. It appears to be in the material world, but actually it's spiritual. It's like the embassy. And when, and so the Lord resides there, but He's not in the material world. It's spiritual, although it's surrounded by the material world. And so the demigods, this is a difference between the demigods and demons, that the demigods, when they're in difficulty, they approach the Supreme Lord for shelter, for help, for protection. And the demons, they try to be successful by their own strength, or they take shelter of someone material. And here, when they take shelter of Brahma or Shiva, they're taking shelter of them as material demigods, not as Vaishnavas. And the strength that one gets from Vishnu or Krishna is always superior to the strength that one can organize by one's own resources or by alliances with other material people. And therefore, devotees are always successful. Kanteya pratijani hina me bhakta pranashyati. Sometimes it happens that even devotees are at odds with each other. They're both devotees, but they're at odds with each other, and they're both praying to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gave the example that the householder prays to Krishna, "Dear Lord, please keep my house and property safe tonight." And the thief is praying to Krishna, "Dear Lord, please make me successful in burglarizing this house." So Srila Prabhupada said, so what is Krishna to do? He's the Supreme Father of all living entities. He has to be equal to everyone. He has to fulfill everyone's desires. So Prabhupada said, Krishna becomes perplexed. How can I fulfill both of these opposing desires? And then Srila Prabhupada said, we should not put Krishna into difficulty by our desires. He said the difficulty is that although they're devotees, they're praying to Krishna, but they're making their own plans. The thief is making his plan, I'm going to steal from this house and I'll use the money for such and such. And the householder is making his plans, I'm going to keep everything safely and I'm going to enjoy and whatever his plans are. And so Prabhupada said both are giving trouble to Krishna, because each is praying to Krishna to help him in the fulfillment of his plans, his desires. And so Prabhupada said, we should not give trouble to Krishna, we should give up our own nonsense plans and surrender to Krishna's plan. Sarvadharman prityaja mamekam sarvam praja. Then Krishna will be relieved of his perplexity and and he'll really be happy. He's always happy with his devotees, but if we give up our independent plans and surrender to his plan, surrender to him and ask him to enlighten us what is his plan, then he's especially pleased with us, and he will embrace us and bring us very close to his lotus feet. Hare Krishna. So are there any questions or comments? Yes, Gaurnataraj?
In the purport it was saying that even the neophyte is considered transcendental, and we understand transcendental means to be above the modes. So if that means in the due course in time you'll become transcendental, or because transcendental means being above the modes and the neophytes can be under the modes?
That is a good question. The purport does say that one is transcendental, but still it's a good question because we look at the behavior of devotees, we observe our own behavior, and what does it mean, transcendental? Well, a disciple asked Srila Prabhupada the same question, and Srila Prabhupada replied that devotional service is transcendental, and as long as the devotee is engaged in devotional service, he's considered to be transcendentally situated. And he gave the example of a person in a boat, that if the say you're taking out a sailboat, some small boat, if you're not so experienced and expert, then if there's waves in the ocean, the boat will toss and turn. But because you're in the boat, you're not actually touched by the water. So Srila Prabhupada was saying that if you're in the boat of devotional service, even if you're not so expert and there, when there's some turbulence, the boat is tossing and turning, there's some disturbance. You're not like completely equipoised. But still, you're in the boat and you're not actually touched by the water. You take the water to be the modes of material nature. So it's a beautiful analogy. The boat is being tossed by the waves of material nature, but you're not being touched by the water because you're in the boat. And in that sense, you're transcendental. Just don't jump out of the boat. Don't get thrown out of the boat. But if you stay in the boat, and that's remaining properly situated in one's determination. If you stay in the boat, you won't be touched, and eventually Krishna will give you the intelligence how to bring the boat home safely to dock at his lotus feet. Yes, Rasaraj Prabhu?
I had two questions. One regarding the first part of the lecture, regarding arindama, and the second part regarding for the first part,
do we have another microphone, a portable microphone?
Maybe I just use. For the first part, you mentioned that there is attachment to devotees, and especially in Grasta life, there is, you are a devotee, your wife is a devotee, good chances, and you see in the community, husband, wife, both devotees. at the same time, there is service to Krishna, there is service to the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And so there is service to the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And in a lot of cases, these two don't necessarily, there is a time factor. So which takes precedence?
Rasaraj Prabhu has asked a very intelligent question. A very intelligent question. We have only so much time and energy in a day, and we have to take care of our family members because they're also devotees. But we also have an obligation to Srila Prabhupada's mission. And sometimes to give ourselves to the mission means that we take time and energy away from our family members. So how do we know how much to do of each? The answer is that Krishna within the heart will guide you. When Mother Yashoda was feeding baby Krishna with her breast milk, the milk that was on the fire began to boil over. And so Mother Yashoda had to set aside baby Krishna to tend to the milk on the fire. And he became very upset because he wasn't satisfied. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that everything in the household of Mother Yashoda was meant for Krishna. But sometimes, in the course of service to Krishna, one has to do one thing first and another thing later. Or one may have to set aside something that one is doing and attend to something else. And Srila Prabhupada says that the intelligence, what to do first in Krishna's service and what to do next in Krishna's service, comes from Krishna within the heart. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. But of course, we do have the advantage of the association of devotees. We can also get guidance from the devotees. Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya. In the beginning of, this is more on the practical side, but when one has young children, they take more time and energy. And the wife also needs help. It's too much just for the wife. So in the beginning, one may have to spend more time on the family, even at the expense of so-called direct service to the mission. But as the child ages and starts to go to school and is less demanding, then one can again, devote more energy to direct service. And then when the child's grown, then there's Vanaprastha ashram, it can be even more engagement. Then,
so this probably leads to the second question. You mentioned the Malkrishna Maharaj said that one should be given some space and time in case one sees a devotee going away from one's steady practices. At the same time, as a community, it proudly includes the rest of the devotees, maybe not to interfere, but to not give so much time and space that the person completely goes away. You probably want to spend more time with the devotees.
That's a very good point. And I should clarify what I meant. In fact, I'm even going to say a little more about your first question. And that is that, the early years of a child are extremely critical for the child's future development. And the child really needs a lot of time with both parents to develop properly. And if the child doesn't get that sort of loving, supportive care, it will have a wound that it will carry into its adult life. And that wound will not only affect the person emotionally, it could affect the person physically and even spiritually. In the last weeks, I keep meeting devotees who felt neglected by their parents in their childhoods, felt abandoned. These are not people who were, not all of them were children of devotees. Many of them were not children of devotees, but their karmi parents neglected them, abandoned them. And it's created a wound in them that is troubling them now in their adult life as devotees, and so we should be aware of that. What a great responsibility it is to be a parent. And yes, Guru nasasyat, Pita nasasyat, no one should become a guru or a father or a mother or a husband unless he can deliver his dependent from birth and death. But that, because we're souls, yes, that was my point, we're souls, but we are in the body, gross body and subtle bodies. And the gross body and subtle body have to be kept in a favorable condition as far as practical, to provide a favorable setting for the soul to progress in Krishna consciousness. Yes, Krishna consciousness is transcendental, but if one's sort of physical health is less disturbing and one's emotional life is less disturbing, then it creates a more peaceful environment for the soul to think of Krishna. So that's very much part of the responsibility of being a mother or father or husband to a wife. And a lot of what determines whether someone will take to Krishna consciousness is what they observe in the practitioners of Krishna consciousness. Someone may get a book and be very inspired by the philosophy. Someone may join the kirtan and be very inspired by the experience. But ultimately the person is going to look at the devotees and consider, if I begin this process and I stay with this process, how am I going to end up? You know, they'll think I'll probably end up like these people because they've been doing it, and so what they see in us will be a very important factor for them. And if they see that our families' lives are congenial, of course there's always problems in the material world. I mean, that would be an illusion to think that there's going to be any perfection in the material world. But still, in the context of imperfection, if they see that, you know, the husbands are happy, the wives are happy, the children are happy, they'll be more likely to think, well, this is a nice thing. Because we're talking about bringing new people into Krishna consciousness. Generally, new people have material desires. So we want them to see that they can be happy materially and spiritually at the same time. Later on, they may pray, you know, please sever my affection for my kinsman, but not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. In the beginning, you know, please make it all work nicely. I want to be loved. I want to have someone I can love. I want to be happy. So if they see they can have that in Krishna consciousness by our example, then they'll be more inclined to join. And so that's very much a part of preaching, to have an exemplary family, not just in terms of sadhana and service, but in the fullest sense. Yes, Gauranataraj.
On one hand, it is mentioned that if one surrenders to Krishna, then there's no reaction, we don't have to worry about anything. But then it is also mentioned, like in the beginning, like we thought, we don't have to worry about our parents, we don't have to worry about our, doing so many, duties which a regular, normal human being does. Now we are just surrendered to Krishna. And then I also heard that means we are 100% surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna takes care of everything. Otherwise we are, unless we have reached to the position of being a pure devotee, we are responsible for all this day-to-day duty. Otherwise we have to incur reactions for that. Can you please comment on that?
Yes. Gauranataraj Prabhu was also asked a very relevant question. Rupa Goswami gives the definition of pure devotional service, anyavilasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakti vittama. In the commentary to this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur raises the hypothetical example that a son is a devotee and his father dies. Now, performing the funeral rites of the father comes in the category of varnashram dharma, and pure devotional service is beyond varnashram dharma. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam praja. So, should the devotee perform the funeral rites? In principle, the devotee has no need to, because he's engaged in pure devotional service, which is beyond, jnana karmadi and avritam. It's beyond karma and jnana and other practices outside devotional service. But the son may consider, if I don't perform the funeral rites, people may criticize that, he's a devotee, he doesn't even care for his own father, he's not doing his duty as a son to his father and to his family. And thinking that ultimately we want everyone to become Krishna conscious, we want to create a favorable atmosphere for them to become Krishna conscious, he may consider, I should go, I should do the funeral ceremony. But this phrase, jnana karmadi and avritam means not covered by. If he thought that, I have to do the funeral rites for my father, otherwise, I won't be able to advance spiritually. That means his understanding of bhakti is covered, because bhakti is independent. It doesn't depend on jnana or karma or yoga or tapasya. But if he does it in the knowledge that I don't have to do this for my spiritual advancement, but for Krishna's service, so that people don't criticize devotees and devotional service, and maybe even, become a little favorable, he can do it. That's on that platform. But the fact is that we have to keep the body and soul together to serve Krishna, and so that means physically we have to do some things to maintain our health. Like Prabhupada took his walks, took his massage, had his regulated time for meals, and especially, you can say on a human level, on the absolute platform, it may not be so relevant, but on the human level, it may be relevant to do things for friends and family that will at least keep them from becoming inimical to Krishna consciousness, and may help them become a little favorable. And that also, but our real relationships should be with devotees. A real friendship should be with devotees, with pure devotees. They can understand us as devotees, they can help us. That's where our heart should be. But we can do the other too. In that mood that people shouldn't become critical of us. And maybe even they'll become a little favorable. Did that answer your question? Hare Krishna.
I was wondering, you were talking about devotees and how we should receive or how we should view devotees, and how we should see them as every devotee dear to Krishna, even if they're not on the top topmost level. And I was wondering if that term devotee could apply to anyone who's practicing spiritual life, even if it's not directly the bhakti yoga process. If I'm just trying to make a distinction between, is there a distinction between devotees and non-devotees, and what, how you would define a devotee?
Well, I mean, specifically we're talking in the context of devotees of Krishna or Vishnu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that there may be practitioners of in other traditions. And the main thing is that they should be pure devotees. That means their goal should not be material enjoyment, and their goal should not be impersonal liberation. But if their goal is to serve God and love God, then it doesn't matter what tradition they're in that sense. We consider them to be devotees. And, that would apply to them. But there was also that second part of Rasaraj Prabhu's question. I actually meant to answer it. And that is, he's saying that, he does leave devotees alone. They may stray further away from Krishna consciousness. And I think that the specific context in which Tamal Krishna Goswami made that particular statement that I quoted was in relation to very senior devotees. And those devotees would have their own friends, spiritual friends who are on their level, who they would take shelter of. For a devotee to be isolated is very dangerous on any level. And when Rasaraj Prabhu asked his question, I thought of a statement by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that if a god brother or god sister is having difficulty, we should speak to them as if they were our own brother or sister, and sort of like appeal to them or plead with them, to not give up, the mission of human life, not give up the values of life. That would be a relevant instruction, because we're dealing with different levels. So on a certain level, a devotee could actually lose his or her determination to continue in devotional service. And in that case, it would be good, but not in the mood of like legislating or controlling, but in the mood of, like he said, a brother to a brother or sister to a sister. Just really appeal from heart to heart. Don't give up this opportunity. And on a higher level, again, assuming that the devotee is not isolated, let the devotee work it out with his peers, and as an institution, don't try to intervene, with a more advanced devotee, more senior devotee, let him work it out. But if unfortunately even a more senior devotee is isolated, then it would be appropriate for. But that's sort of a different case. But yes, it could be appropriate for peers of that person to approach him and extend themselves to him. And that's still within the idea of giving the person time and space, because we're not trying to enforce any legislative action, but just friend to friend, heart to heart. We're trying to help the person, not with any force or compulsion, but just heart to heart out of genuine care and concern. That wouldn't really be not giving them the time and space they need, but helping to put something favorable in the time and space that they're using to deal with their problem. So much depends on sincerity and the intelligence Krishna gives within the heart. But I think that is true. Like this one class, Prabhupada was giving Srimad-Bhagavatam class in Los Angeles, and he noticed one of the senior devotees was missing. And he asked where the devotee was, and one of the other devotees said, he's sick. And Prabhupada said, well, have you done anything to help him? And he said, and Prabhupada was discussing the 26 qualities of a devotee at that time. He said one of the qualities of a devotee is sympathetic. Should be very sympathetic to a god brother or god sister. If the person's having some difficulty, try to help. If the person is sick, try to help. I think that's it. It's the mood. The mood is sympathetic, loving, caring, supportive. That's wanted. Everyone needs that. Well, thank you very much. This evening there's a program in Plano or somewhere out there, at the home of Preeti, Mother Manjuali's sister. And then tomorrow morning we'll have class in the temple again, and then tomorrow evening, I believe the Plano Namhata is coming to Rasaraj Prabhu's house. So we'll be going there. And after that there's Harinam, so lots of engagement. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.